When Hammer reached the target, he let out a low whistle. The 5 shots had punched through a grouping no larger than a silver dollar, all clustered around the exact center of the bullseye. It was the kind of shooting that professionals trained years to achieve, the kind that separated amateurs from experts. He pulled the target down and walked back, holding it up for everyone to see. The silence stretched, heavy and profound. Then Tommy started clapping. Slow at first, then faster, genuine and enthusiastic. One by one, the other bikers joined in, their applause echoing off the canyon walls. Sarah stood up from the firing line, her face impassive, but something in her eyes softened. Just a little, just enough to show that their respect meant something to her. Hammer approached, the target still in his hand. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" "Army taught me the basics," she said. "Afghanistan taught me the rest. When you're responsible for keeping your units safe from threats they can't even see, you get good fast. Or you don't come home." Tommy stepped forward, pulling the envelope of cash from his jacket. He held it out to her, no hesitation, no bitterness. "You earned this fair and square. That was the best shooting I've seen in 20 years. Sarah took the envelope, but she didn't pocket it immediately. She looked at the assembled bikers, at their faces, weathered and hard but honest. "I appreciate the competition," she said. "It's been a while since I felt like I was good at something." "More than good," Hammer said. "That was exceptional." "You military?" "Was," Sarah replied, her voice taking on a harder edge. "Honorably discharged 3 years ago. Medical retirement." Her hand unconsciously moved to her left leg, the one she favored. Hammer's eyes followed the gesture, understanding, dawning. "Injury." "IED," she said simply. "Took out our convoy. I was lucky. 3 of my squad weren't." The weight of those words settled over the gathering. Every man there understood loss, understood brotherhood, understood the burden of surviving when others didn't. It was written in the scars they carried, both visible and hidden. "I'm sorry," Hammer said. "And he meant it," Sarah nodded, accepting the condolence without elaborating. She didn't need to. Some stories didn't need telling, they just needed acknowledgement. Tommy cleared his throat, breaking the heavy silence. "Listen, Sarah, we're not usually in the habit of inviting outsiders, but, well, you're not exactly an outsider, are you? Veteran, incredible shooter, and you just cleaned our clocks with grace. How about you stick around? We're about to fire up the grill, crack some beers. Consider it a celebration of your victory." Sarah hesitated. It was clear she wasn't used to social invitations, wasn't comfortable in crowds. But something in Tommy's genuine offer, in the respectful nods from the other bikers, made her pause. "I don't want to intrude," she began. "You're not intruding," Hammer cut in. "You're being invited. There's a difference. Besides, I'd like to hear more about your service if you're willing to share. We've got a few vets in the club. They'd probably enjoy swapping stories." Sarah looked at the envelope in her hand, then at the faces surrounding her. Rough, honest faces marked by sun and years and choices, but not unkind. Not cruel. Just real. "All right," she said finally. "For a bit. But I've got somewhere I need to be later." As the group moved toward the shade, where coolers and a portable grill had been set up, several bikers made a point to introduce themselves. Not with tough guy posturing or testing, but with genuine respect. "Name's Jake," said a biker with gray streaking his dark beard. "Did 2 tours in Iraq with the Marines. That shooting was something else." "Ricky," another offered, extending a hand weathered by engine grease and sun. "Army Reserve. Never saw combat, but I've been around rifles my whole life." "You've got a gift." Sarah shook their hands, accepting their compliments with quiet grace. She wasn't used to this, to being celebrated instead of examined, respected instead of pitied. As burgers sizzled on the grill and beer bottles were opened with practiced flicks of wrist, the conversation flowed. Sarah found herself talking, really talking, for the first time in months. About Afghanistan, not the horror parts, but the moments in between. The sunrise over the mountains that took your breath away. The kids who would wave at convoys. The bonds formed between soldiers who trusted each other with their lives. The bikers listened without judgment, asking questions that showed they understood. Many of them were veterans themselves. Others had family who served. They knew the weight of service, The difficulty of coming home to a world that had moved on without you. Hammer sat down beside her on a weathered cooler, handing her a fresh bottle. "Can I ask you something personal, Sarah?" She looked at him, guarded but not defensive. "You can ask. I might not answer. That 5,000 you put down, was that money you could afford to lose?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed, the sound carrying more weight than words. "No, it wasn't. Then why risk it?" She stared out at the desert, at the endless expanse of rock and sky. "Because for the last 3 years I've been invisible. People look at me and see a broken veteran, someone to pity or ignore. I needed to prove, to myself more than anyone, that I'm still worth something. That I'm still good at something." Hammer nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now," Sarah said, a small smile touching her lips, "I remember that I am." Tommy joined them, carrying a plate loaded with food. "You know, Sarah, we do these competitions every month. Different challenges. Shooting, riding skills, even mechanical work. There's always money on the line, always bragging rights. You should come back." Sarah accepted the plate, surprised by her own hunger. "I don't know. This was kind of a one-time thing. Why?" Tommy pressed. "You're clearly one of the best shots I've ever seen. You could make some decent money, have some fun, be around people who respect what you can do." "I'm not really a joiner," Sarah admitted. "Never have been. Neither are most of us," Jake chimed in, settling down nearby. "That's why we fit together. A bunch of people who don't fit anywhere else." The words resonated with Sarah in a way she hadn't expected. She'd spent the years since her discharge feeling like she was floating, untethered from everything she'd once known. The military had been her family, her purpose, her identity. When that was taken away, she'd been left drifting. But here, in this dusty quarry, surrounded by bikers who'd just lost money to her but treated her with respect anyway, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt seen, not as a victim, not as a former soldier, but as herself, capable, skilled, and valuable. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber, Sarah found herself laughing at a story Ricky was telling about a disastrous camping trip. Real laughter, the kind that came from the belly and surprised even herself. Hammer caught her eye and raised his bottle in a quiet salute. She returned the gesture, a small acknowledgement passing between them. Respect given, respect received. When the gathering finally began to break up, engines rumbling back to life one by one, Tommy approached Sarah one last time. "Seriously, think about coming back next month. We're doing a long-range challenge. 500 yards with scopes. Prize pot usually hits 20 grand. Sarah's eyebrows rose. $20,000 was more than she made in 6 months at her current job as a night security guard. It was rent for a year, medical bills paid off, maybe even enough to start thinking about a future instead of just surviving the present. "I'll think about it," she said. And this time, she meant it. As she climbed into her truck and started the engine, she glanced in the rearview mirror at the group of bikers seeing her off. They waved, casual and friendly, already talking among themselves about her incredible shooting. She pulled out onto the desert road, the envelope of cash sitting on the passenger seat. $15,000 felt heavy in a way that had nothing to do with weight. It was possibility, opportunity, and something else she'd almost forgotten the feeling of. Hope. The desert stretched out before her, vast and open, full of potential. For the first time in 3 years, Sarah Mitchell allowed herself to think that maybe, just maybe, her best days weren't all behind her. Maybe they were just beginning. As the quarry disappeared in her rearview mirror, the sun setting fire to the clouds above, Sarah didn't notice the black SUV that had been parked on a ridge overlooking the entire competition. Inside, a man in an expensive suit lowered his binoculars and made a phone call. "Sir, I found her. The marksman from the 101st. She's even better than the report suggested." A pause as he listened to the voice on the other end. "Yes, sir. I believe she's exactly what we need for the operation." This SUV started up and headed in the opposite direction, leaving only tire tracks in the dust and questions hanging in the desert air. Questions that Sarah would soon have to answer. But tonight, she drove with the windows down and the radio up. allowing herself this one moment of victory, this one evening of feeling like herself again. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Tomorrow always did, but tonight she had won, and that was enough. The desert sun beat down mercilessly on the abandoned quarry outside Barstow, California. Heat waves shimmered off the red rocks, distorting the horizon into a wavering mirage. The sound of motorcycle engines rumbled through the canyon like approaching thunder, each roar announcing the arrival of another rider. Black leather jackets gleamed in the sunlight, emblazoned with patches that told stories of brotherhood, loyalty, and a code most outsiders would never understand. At the center of the gathering stood Marcus Hammer Johnson, a mountain of a man with arms like tree trunks and a beard that reached halfway down his chest. He was the president of the California chapter, a position he'd earned through respect, not fear. His voice carried authority even when he spoke softly, which wasn't often. "All right, brothers," Hammer called out, his voice cutting through the rumble of idling engines. "Today we settle this. Tommy's been running his mouth about being the best shot in 3 states. Time to put up or shut up." Laughter erupted from the group. Tommy Bullseye Martinez stepped forward, grinning widely. He was lean, wiry, with eyes that could track a fly across a room. He'd been a competitive shooter before the club, had trophies gathering dust in his garage. Now he shot for pride, for bragging rights, and for the thrill of proving he was still the sharpest eye in the Brotherhood. 10,000 says none of you can touch me at 200 yards, Tommy announced, slapping a thick envelope against his palm. Iron sights, bolt action, 5 shots. Closest to center wins. The crowd of bikers stirred. $10,000 was serious money, even split among a dozen riders. But more than that, it was about respect, about proving that age hadn't dulled their skills, that the Brotherhood still had teeth. One by one, riders stepped up to the firing line. The targets, hand-painted circles on rusted metal sheets, stood 200 yards downrange, barely visible through the heat shimmer. The crack of rifle fire echoed off the canyon walls. Some shots found their mark. Others kicked up dust several inches wide. After an hour, Tommy stood victorious, his grouping tight and centered, his grin insufferable. "That's how it's done, boys," he crowed, collecting bills and good-natured curses from his brothers. That's when she appeared. The sound of an engine, different from the deep rumble of Harleys, caught their attention. A dusty Ford pickup truck, older than most of the bikes present, pulled up to the edge of the gathering. The engine ticked as it cooled. For a moment, no one moved. Then the driver's door opened. She was small, maybe 5'4", with sun-bleached brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her jeans were faded, her boots scuffed and worn. A simple grey tank top revealed arms that were lean and corded with muscle, the kind earned through work, not gyms. But it was her eyes that made several of the bikers take an instinctive step back. They were the color of steel in winter, calm and assessing. Eyes that had seen things most people only had nightmares about. She walked with a slight limp, favoring her left leg, but there was nothing weak about her movement. It was the careful, economical motion of someone who had learned to work around pain, to make every step count. "Heard you boys were having a shooting competition," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "Mind if I join?" The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Hammer stepped forward, arms crossed over his chest. He wasn't hostile, just curious, and perhaps a little protective of his territory. "This is a private event, ma'am," he said, his tone respectful but firm. "Club business," she nodded as if she'd expected that response. "I understand. I just thought, since you're taking bets and all, you might appreciate some real competition." Tommy laughed, not cruelly, but with the confidence of someone who'd just proven himself. "No offense, lady, but this isn't a carnival game. We're shooting real distance here." She turned those steel-gray eyes on him. 200 yards, iron sights, bolt action. 5 rounds. "I heard." "Yeah?" Tommy's grin widened. "And what makes you think you can hang with us?" "I spent 3 tours in Afghanistan," she said simply. "Mostly Helmand Province. I was a designated marksman with the 101st Airborne." The mood shifted immediately. Several bikers exchanged glances. A few straightened up, their postures changing from casual to attentive. Military service meant something here, even if she was an outsider. Hammer studied her for a long moment. "What's your name, soldier?" Sarah Mitchell. She didn't elaborate, didn't mention rank or commendations. Just her name offered plainly. "Sarah Mitchell," Hammer repeated, tasting the name. "You serious about this?" "Because these boys don't go easy, even on veterans. I wouldn't want them to," she replied. Tommy stepped forward, his competitive spirit overriding his skepticism. "Tell you what, Sarah Mitchell, you put down $5,000. If you can beat my grouping, you take the pot. All 15 grand. But if you lose, we keep your money and your pride, $5,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. It was clear from the way her jaw tightened that this wasn't pocket change for her. But she didn't hesitate. "Deal," she said. "But I need to see the rifle first." Tommy led her to the makeshift firing line, where a weathered Remington 700 lay on a folding table. It was a classic hunting rifle, nothing fancy, but well-maintained. Sarah picked it up with the ease of long familiarity, checking the action, sighting down the barrel, feeling the weight and balance. "Iron sights only," Tommy reminded her. "No scope." "I heard you the first time," she said mildly. She worked the bolt several times, smooth and practiced. Then she checked the magazine, counted the rounds. 5, just as specified. The bikers watched in silence as she moved through her inspection with the methodical precision of a professional. "This'll do," she said finally. Hammer gestured to the firing line. "Ladies first." Sarah walked to the line, rifle in hand. She didn't hurry, didn't showboat. She simply moved with purpose, each action deliberate. When she reached the line, she knelt down, not standing like Tommy had, but taking a low, stable position. Several of the bikers muttered to each other. Kneeling was harder, required more core strength, more control. It was also more stable, if you had the skill to use it properly. Sarah settled the rifle against her shoulder, her breathing slowing to a steady rhythm. The quarry fell silent, except for the distant cry of a hawk and the whisper of wind across stone. She didn't rush, didn't jerk the trigger or flinch at the recoil. The first shot cracked out sharp and clean. 200 yards downrange, the metal target rang like a bell. Tommy pulled out a spotting scope, training it on the target. His confident grin faltered. "Center ring." "Dead center." The second shot followed 10 seconds later. Same steady rhythm, same controlled breathing. "Another ring of metal on metal. Center ring again," Tommy reported, his voice quieter now. By the third shot, the entire group had gone silent. This wasn't luck. This wasn't beginner's fortune. This was skill, refined and honed through countless hours and real-world consequences. The fourth shot punched through almost the exact same hole as the third. Tommy didn't need the spotting scope anymore. He could see it through his own eyes, the tight grouping that was emerging on that distant target. "She's grouping tighter than mine," he said, and there was no shame in his voice now, only respect. "Way tighter." Sarah chambered the fifth and final round. She took a breath, let half of it out and squeezed. The rifle barked. The target sang. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Hammer walked down range, his boots crunching on gravel. The other bikers followed, a procession of leather and denim moving across the hard-packed earth. Sarah stayed at the firing line, ejecting the magazine, clearing the chamber, making the rifle safe with the automatic precision of someone for whom these actions were as natural as breathing. 3 weeks passed before Sarah returned to the quarry. 3 weeks of thinking, debating, and ultimately accepting that she needed this. Not just the money, though. $20,000 would change her life. She needed the purpose, the challenge, the feeling of being good at something again. The second competition was different. Word had spread about the veteran who'd humiliated the club's best shooter, and the gathering was larger. More bikes, more riders, more spectators. The prize pot had swelled to $25,000 as other clubs heard about the challenge and wanted in. Sarah arrived early, before the crowd, and found Hammer already setting up targets downrange. 500 yards this time, almost 3 times the distance of the first challenge. "Wasn't sure you'd show," Hammer called out when he saw her truck. "Almost didn't," Sarah admitted, climbing out. But I figured I owed Tommy a rematch. Tommy's been practicing every day since you beat him, Hammer said with a grin. He's determined to restore his reputation. Good, Sarah said. I don't want to win because nobody tried. The competition began at noon, when the sun was highest and the heat shimmer at its worst. 15 shooters total, all confident, all skilled. The format was simple. 5 shots at 500 yards, scoped rifles, best grouping wins. Sarah watched as shooter after shooter took their turn. Some were good, groupings within 6 inches. A few were excellent, getting within 4. Tommy went last among the early shooters, and his grouping measured 3.5 inches, dead center. The crowd erupted in cheers. He walked back with his characteristic grin. Your turn, Sarah. Let's see if lightning strikes twice. Sarah approached the firing line. The rifle was different this time, a custom Remington 700 with a high-quality scope. She checked it methodically, adjusting the scope for distance and wind, feeling the trigger pull. Settling into the familiar rhythm of preparation, she took her position, prone this time for maximum stability. The world narrowed to her breathing, the crosshairs, and the distant target that seemed to float in the heat waves. The first shot cracked out. Through the scope, she watched the bullet strike just left of center. She adjusted, compensating for a slight wind she'd felt on her cheek. Second shot closer, third shot. Dead center, fourth shot. Same hole as the third, fifth shot. Same hole again. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Tommy was running downrange with the spotting scope, Hammer right behind him. When they reached the target, Tommy let out a whoop that echoed off the canyon walls. 2 inches. Her grouping is 2 inches. He turned back to the crowd, holding up the target.
This woman is unreal.
The crowd erupted, not in disappointment but in genuine appreciation. They just witnessed something extraordinary, and they knew it. As Sarah stood up from the firing line, making the rifle safe, she was surrounded by bikers offering congratulations, asking questions about her technique, her experience, her story. It was overwhelming and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Hammer pushed through the crowd, carrying an envelope so thick it could barely close. 25,000 as promised, plus another 5 that Tommy insisted on adding as a personal challenge bonus. Sarah took the envelope with shaking hands. $30,000. More money than she'd seen since her discharge. There's something else, Hammer said, his voice lower now, more serious. A man's been asking about you. Came by the clubhouse 2 days ago. Said he had a job opportunity, that he'd seen you shoot at the last competition. Sarah's stomach tightened. What kind of man? The kind that wears $1,000 suits and drives government plates, Hammer replied. I told him we didn't give out information about our guests, but he left a card. Said if you were interested, you should call. He handed her a plain black business card. No name, just a phone number and an address in Los Angeles. Sarah stared at it, her mind racing. She'd left that life behind, or thought she had. The military, the missions, the constant pressure of being operational. She'd walked away from it, or been forced away by her injury and the discharge that followed. You don't have to call, Hammer said quietly. Whatever that is, whatever they want, you've already proven you don't need them. You're doing fine on your own. Sarah looked up at him, then at the gathered bikers who'd become something unexpected over the past month. Not quite friends, not quite family, but something in between. People who respected her for what she could do, not what she'd lost. You know what? Sarah said, a genuine smile spreading across her face. You're right. I don't need them. She took the business card and in one smooth motion tore it in half, then in half again. She let the pieces fall to the desert floor, where the wind scattered them among the rocks and dust. I've spent 3 years thinking I needed to get back to who I was, Sarah said, her voice strong and clear. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe I need to figure out who I am now. Tommy stepped forward. Does that mean you'll come back next month? We're thinking about a team challenge. Pairs shooting, moving targets. Sarah looked at the envelope in her hand, then at the faces surrounding her. Rough-weathered, honest faces. People who'd taken a chance on an outsider and treated her with respect when she'd earned it. Yeah, she said. Yeah, I'll be back. But next time, I'm buying the beer. The crowd erupted in cheers and laughter. As the sun began its descent and the celebration kicked into full gear, Sarah found herself in the middle of it all, not watching from the edges, but participating, laughing, belonging. She'd come to the desert 3 weeks ago, broken and desperate, willing to risk everything for one moment of feeling capable again. She was leaving with money, yes, but more importantly, with something she'd lost along the way. Her sense of self-worth, her confidence, her place in the world. The Hell's Angels had bet she couldn't outshoot them. They'd lost that bet twice. But in losing, they'd given her something far more valuable than money. They'd given her respect, community, and the space to rebuild herself on her own terms. As Sarah drove away that evening, the envelope on her passenger seat and the sunset painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, she thought about the future for the first time in years with something other than dread. She thought about it with anticipation, with plans, with hope. She didn't need a government job or a military mission to define her worth. She had her skills, her determination, and now a community that valued both. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't about winning competitions or proving others wrong. Sometimes they're about proving to yourself that you're still standing, still fighting, still worth something. Sarah Mitchell had done exactly that, and she was just getting started. Thank you for watching this incredible story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. 2 more amazing stories are waiting for you on your screen. Just click to watch and don't forget to like and share. Until next time, keep believing in the impossible.